At the moment, fellow Kenyans, our public wage bill accounts for 52% of revenue. The global average for middle-income countries like ourselves is about 35%. Further, the public wage bill accounts for more than 10% of our gross domestic product, well above the middle-income country average of about 5%. All public and state officers, myself included, number approximately 680,000. Just about 1.5% of the entire Kenyan population.
President Uhuru Kenyatta there addressing the issue of public wage bill that has been a concern in so many quarters in the country. And tonight on The Big Story, we're focusing on one specific group, civil servants. And this is why. I remember a couple of years ago, someone would say, I want to work in the civil service because why? Unaenda, unaweka koti kwa kiti, unapotea, mpaka saa 10, unachukua koti, unaenda nyumbani, end month, iko mshahara. Yeah? So, that is the conversation you're having this evening because the government is not only battling a bloated wage bill, but also struggling with an aging workforce. And now the government will no longer hire employees on permanent and pensionable terms. Nearly 30,000 jobs will soon be up for grabs in the civil service on contract terms. The move is intended to slowly replace the aging workforce as well as address performance concerns. According to Stephen Kirigo, the chairman, Public Service Commission, the civil service is not bloated, but only hosts a workforce that is resting easy in the comfort of permanent and pensionable employment terms. But how will this affect service delivery? That's the question. Will a contract public service address the ballooning wage bill? And what are the unintended consequences of this particular proposal? That is the conversation we're having on The Big Story this evening. We will be talking to Dr. Sylvester Obongo. He's the Director of Performance at the Public Service Commission. We'll also be speaking to Olekina Jerry, who's the First Secretary General, Kenya Union of Civil Servants. But for now, let me bring in our lead reporter for today, Duncan Hayemba, who's speaking to the Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja on what his thoughts are on this particular proposal. Hayemba, if you can hear me, good evening.
Thank you, Linda. We are coming to you live from Parliament buildings, and we'll be engaging one of the lawmakers just to know how they've taken in the news that maybe was made public yesterday by the Public Service Commission as well as the Salaries and Remuneration Commission at an event in which, to quote the chair of PSC, Stephen Kirogo, he said that we must be brutal if we want change. What was he saying? I was saying that they need to move with speed and make some new changes that in one way or the other will be aimed at taming the ever ballooning public wage bill. Now, these are some of the proposals that they've said. All civil servants will have to be put on a 3-year contract, and with that they are saying that is expected to begin in the next financial year, which starts in July, in which about 3,200 jobs will already be available. And then they are saying of the 66,000 public service vacancies or jobs available, when they put everyone on a 3-year contract, then in essence there will be about 3,000 jobs that will be created immediately. So those maybe are some of the issues that made him say that we must be brutal if we really want to have change. But I'll be talking to Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja, who is also the Senate chair, the chair of the Senate Standing Committee on Matters Labor. Senator Sakaja, good evening, welcome to The Big Story, and maybe your reaction to what the Public Service Commission wants to put across in what they are saying. It will be a game changer as far as the challenge to unemployment is concerned, as well as taming the ever ballooning public wage bill.
Thank you very much. As you've just said, This is something that was revealed in an event, possibly to a great extent unrelated. Yet he says it's far-reaching, it's earth-shaking, it's radical. And our first question as representatives of the people is the manner in which such decisions are made. You know, our constitution talks about values and principles, and the first one in Article 10 is public participation and inclusivity. And we want to know, because we have heard it just like you on the news, yet we have a Senate Committee of Labour, we have a National Assembly Committee of Labour. So we want to know, number one, was the public involved in such a decision? No matter what the merits or demerits might be, the first basic place is, was the public involved? Number two, we want to see what was the feasibility study done. We want to see the numbers. You know, what are you talking about? When you look at our workforce and our young people especially, and those who are seeking jobs, we cannot just look at them as a cost. We must look at them as an opportunity, as an asset that this country can use to develop. So what's the impact of this on the national development agenda? In the last parliament, I brought a bill about the employment authority that's supposed to address the skills gap in this country. Is this a move informed by an actual analysis and a report on the skills gap in our country, vis-a-vis what we're training our people and what we need in the market, and especially in public service, and what then the public service needs? So I think there are a lot of questions that we require to, we need to hear answered. And I have a statement in the Senate tomorrow. I'm taking it up now as a Labour committee in the Senate, so that we can fully understand, even in terms of numbers, when you talk about wage bill, when you put people on a 3-year contract, every 3 years you must pay them a gratuity, which is 31% of their pay. So is it more expensive? Is it less expensive? Do you then invest in people, give them training for 3 years, and then they go for another job? There must be much more put into it than us just saying, oh, the wage bill is too high, so let's put people on contract. So we want to go through that and understand that what we're doing is in line with our national development goals, in line with our goal for ensuring that we have proper public service that is efficient, it is lean. Yes, it's bloated in many places, but what is the best way? What is the international best practice? Many countries have dealt with this in the public service. We're not the first country to deal with this. Have we taken into account international best practice and how it relates to our local situation as we speak?
Well, PSC argues that the move is aimed to address two issues. One, to replace the aging workforce, and secondly, to address maybe the challenge that many youth are grappling with in the country, and that is unemployment. And therefore, their argument is by creating, putting everyone on a 3-year contract, those ones, because it will be largely, renewal will be largely based on performance. For those who don't perform, then they'll be offloaded, and then it will pave way for others that maybe it gives them an opportunity. So those are the two possibilities or the angles that PSC is pegging on.
You see, on paper we agree that we need an efficient workforce. On paper we are clear that indeed we want to give these people an opportunity, but we want to hear the real stuff. You know, it's a fact that our pension exposure is too high. And we need to be able to see what the real solution to it is. So we want to go to the nitty-gritty and look at the numbers. And to make sure that as you do this, is it going to cost more or less? You know, when you're removing, first of all, legally, somebody who's been on pensionable, permanent pensionable employment, you cannot just convert it into a contract. Number one, you must then look at all the years they have served and talk about the gratuity. Is it a bigger cost on us? When you talk about freezing new employment, yet you have not created avenues for these people to get employment. Of course, government does not create employment on its own. It creates a facilitative environment for young people to get jobs. What is your big picture plan? And that's why in the National Employment Authority, I made sure the Public Service Commission is sitting there. So are the educational institutions, so are our universities and our employers. So they can say, look, are we preparing our workforce for the future? If you look at the SDGs, number 8 is about work and the future of work. So we want to make sure that all of these have been taken into account, not just for us to say, it's popular to say, look, the too many people in government, let's remove them, let's phase them out. Today, and there have been attempts severally that we have stopped as young parliamentarians over the past few years to increase the retirement age because young people are not getting jobs, and then we see appointments and all you see is, the same kind of people. So we want to have that radical and deep discussion with them so that we make sure that what we're doing for our people is indeed the right thing. And I'd like to tell the Public Service Commission that yes, you have administrative, mandate on these issues, but you will not escape the scrutiny of the representatives of the people. These are things you don't just announce out there. You come and you take us through and we sit down and we discuss and we agree. You might even find good ideas. We have good HR practitioners in parliament who are actually, on top of that, are representatives of the people. So we must make sure at the end of the day that we tackle our biggest challenge. We have people, and it's true, many who are permanent and pensionable become lazy. And they just sit there in their offices, they hang their coats, and they don't come. But there are also very many who are hardworking, who are actually giving their service to this country. How do we make sure that public service is competitive enough to attract the best, yet the most efficient? That is what we require to see in our country. Yeah.
But somebody will ask that because from what I gather from you, it appears like, in other words, in not so many words, you are saying the policy by PSC is dead on arrival on the basis that there was no involvement of maybe the legislative arms, that is neither the committee responsible from the Senate or the National Assembly was involved, and the bigger picture, and more important, whether or not there was sufficient public participation, and if at all there was, whether it was sufficient. So does it mean, somebody would ask, to them they are looking at a way of how they are going to create job opportunities by ensuring many people on contract. So why would you, from where you stand, not be thinking on how maybe you can explore this one further than just saying the first and foremost, you want to know whether there was sufficient public participation?
You see, for us, we're talking about a raft of issues. It is not dead on arrival. In fact, it might be a very noble proposal if we look at the numbers. We're just saying that the new constitution that we have, in fact, it's no longer new. It's now going to be 10 years. It's not new. But it changes how public service and issues of the public are dealt with. You must move along with the leaders. So we're saying, yes, the proposal might be noble or not, but it cannot be that the people that Kenyans have put their trust in to deal with these issues are not aware and are reading them on the newspapers. You must come. We must make sure that together we agree that yes, even if we don't agree, but we must be convinced that yes, this is actually providing opportunities, but also making sure we have an efficient public service. This week is World Public Service Day, and Kenyans want services from the country. Kenyans are actually the ones who are tired of going to offices and finding just quotes on hangers, people talking in vernacular, not serving them, etc. So while we agree in the principle, we're saying we want to go into the nitty-gritty to make sure that indeed our public officers, many of them have spoken to us today. I've received calls from many people in government, in county governments, because we must make sure that the same principle cascades properly to the counties. We have bloated staff. We have counties which have more than 7,000 extra that they don't require. Because earlier on you had the employees of the county councils. Then we got devolution. We had some who were seconded from the national government. And then from that now we have those who governors have employed. So the first governors brought their people. The new governors have brought their people. We must streamline public service. What we're saying is let's do it in a proper way that guarantees those who are serving the security of their work, that it's based yes on performance, but also that they will not be victimized. That is extremely, extremely important for a country. Because our greatest asset as a country is not our gold. It's not oil in Turkana. It is not agriculture even. It is our human resource. Kenyan human resource is valued the world over. You go around this continent, you find Kenyans doing amazing work, and you wonder why we're not seeing it in public service today here in Kenya. And so that is the value you want to bring in, but it must be brought in the proper way. So I'm sure in the next few weeks and in the days and weeks to come, we'll get more clarity onto it. But we want to also make sure that we've safeguarded the gains that we've made in terms of labor relations in this country. Yeah.
So come tomorrow, because you'll be seeking a statement from the ministry. Of course, we've tried to make calls throughout the day. The ministry says that PSC is an independent commission. They cannot meddle. We've tried to engage SRC. They are saying they only come in when they are told to come and set the salaries to cap remuneration. So which paints a picture that was it done single-handedly by the PSC without sufficient consultation? And as you tie your answer to that, I want to know specifics that you'll be seeking tomorrow in your statement on the floor of the Senate.
Thank you. The first thing is, you'll possibly realize that maybe the chair in his commission let the cat out of the bag a bit too early, and maybe they intended to actually involve us and involve different stakeholders, including trade unions, including the people who are actually working in the counties and in the national government. And so for us, we want to see, number one, what effect it has on the national development agenda. Number two, what happens to those who are working currently? Those who are in public service, those who are in, in ministries and parastatals and across the country, what impact does it have immediately? You cannot just pull out, a rabbit out of the hat and say, look, we're doing this from July. That is the Kenya of yesteryears. Kenya changed. Today you have to carry the people along. The people who have the power in this country are the people, wananchi. And so in the statement we will be seeking to see what was the feasibility study that was done. Number two, what is the analysis of the skills gap in the public service today? What is the extent of what they're calling a bloated public service? Even SRC must be involved because at the end of the day, they advise on the remuneration of public officers and they determine the remuneration of state officers like I. If they say today I earn 10,000, that's my salary. So the point we're making is that let's not just look at our workforce as cost centers. Let's not look at public servants in this country who do such an amazing job. Many of them, there are a few rotten potatoes in the bag, but many of them do a marvelous job. Let's not just look at them in terms of how much you're paying them. Let's look at them about, in terms of the value for money we're creating in this country and the culture of work, the culture of hard work pays that we're building amongst our young people.
Maybe as we wind up, young people out there, maybe they'll be looking at, maybe this was the opportunity. Yeah. But of course, the key critical questions that you are saying that are hard questions that must be asked. Yeah. Will it be for them maybe hopes dashed because maybe some of them already pulling their CVs and dusting them in readiness to start making the applications because maybe the Public Service Commission had given many hopes by declaring everyone will get an opportunity once everybody's put on a 3-year contract?
I want to tell the young people that number one, it's not over until the fat lady sings, as the Englishman says. Number two, we must make it very clear that the opportunities we want for young people are not necessarily just being employed in government. How many people are employed in government? Out of a population of close to 50 million, we have a very small percentage. We want government to create a facilitative environment for young people to be employed even in the private sector. So we look at all those things and make sure that at the end of the day, Kenyans get the best deal and they can trust our work because that is what we are elected to do. So we look at it and it is not over until it's over. So this is just a proposal. It is not, by fiat that it has been done. We'll sit with them in the next few days and we'll invite you to come and participate. And we want to hear the views of Kenyans because we believe in the principle of public participation in public service.
Well put, Linda there, Nairobi Senator Sakaja there saying that tomorrow that will be among the issues when he'll be rising to seek a statement from government. Specifically, he has enumerated the issues that they will be wanting to know. Did PSC, the Public Service Commission, put into consideration the elephant in the room? Was there sufficient public participation? The effect on the move on the national development of the national development agenda, the bigger picture, and then of course the gaps that has mentioned too. We'll be monitoring on how this will be developing in the couple of days from Parliament. My name is Duncan Haimba. Over to you in studio.
Duncan, this is a story that is being followed by thousands of Kenyans out there because there are lots of civil servants who are now worried. And even when we said you're having this conversation, I'm having lots of questions on social media as well. But I'd like to pick up where the senator left it. He said, this is just a proposal, but perhaps we can get more clarity from the Public Service Commission. This was announced at a function. He says they're not even aware. So question is, how did we arrive at this decision? Was it arrived at single-handedly by Public Service Commission? Are there unintended consequences? So that clarity that the senator is talking about, we may be able to get it this evening because we have Dr. Sylvester Obongo, who's the Director of Performance Public Service Commission. Sir, thank you for joining us on the big story this evening. We also have Olekina Jerry, First Secretary General, Kenya Union of Civil Servants. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the big story this evening. Dr. let me begin with you. For Kenyans who read this in the newspaper and have lots of questions, how did we arrive at this proposal?
Thank you very much, Linda. I want to pick it within the broader context. The Constitution gives the Public Service Commission the mandate to ensure efficiency and effectiveness of the public service. Therefore, the public service should do everything that is within their mandate to ensure that that happens. Secondly, the Public Service Commission Act 2017 Part 4 says that the Commission shall establish a framework for continuous review of the conditions of service of the public service by taking into account the priorities and the changing needs of the public service. Drawing from that broad mandate, we need therefore to look at what do we need to put in place to ensure that the public service is efficient and effective. We also need to take into consideration that the public service is first and foremost a service provider, not an employer. It employs because it needs to deliver services. Historically, if you look at the story of the development of the public service, the first public service established in the Westminster in 1885, that is when we had the career public service. Before then, we had no career public service. In the US, prior to 1883, before the Civil Service Act, each term of a president ensured that all public servants resigned and left their service. So a president left with all the entire public service, from clerks to the very top. We are therefore looking at a changing environment. The idea of a permanent and pensionable service is an idea brought about by Max Weber in the traditional bureaucracy. It is an idea of 19th century. We are in a changing environment. Is it the best? Here is a public who have complained about civil servants hanging their coats. We are looking at service delivery, and we are saying that what is the best way to move forward? Being employed on contract does not mean that that contract cannot be renewed. It simply helps you to weed out those people who might be complacent because of the nature of the contract. Employment on contract is not new in public service. Until the 80s, 90s, women were employed on contract in the public service. So I don't see the big deal on the debate on employment on contract. For me, the debate should be, does employment on contract interfere with efficient and effective service delivery? 60-story buildings have been built by casuals. Do you have structures for continuity? For me, that is the essence of the debate. Does employment on contract affect service delivery? 2, in Kenya, the issue of wage bill in Kenya is not an issue of numbers. It is an issue of performance. We are measuring bloated wage bill based on the wage bill to revenue ratio. If today KRA collected their target as set up by Treasury target, we will not have a problem of we are talking about. 2, we are looking at productivity of the public service. Why do people feel that public servants are being paid more and not the private sector? It is because there is a perception that the public sector is not productive. So there is issue of productivity and then the issue of performance, both of which can be addressed through the contract engagement. What we are also saying is that we are not converting existing employment terms into contracts. We are putting new entrants into contracts.
Okay,
that is the statement that went out.
Yeah, so that's a good clarification. So civil servants who are already permanent and pensionable will go on as is. It's the new ones who are coming into the system.
So far, that is what has been pronounced. But we must also appreciate that there's a difference between an employment contract and a service and performance contract. The fact that you are employed on permanent and pensionable basis does not mean that you will stay until you retire. What has been a laxity in the public service is enforcing the performance bait. If you looked at that statement, it was mentioned with 2 other things. Apart from the performance, apart from the employment of contract, we are revamping performance contracting and also putting in measures to ensure that the productivity of the civil service goes high. Okay. In Singapore, public servants are paid their bonuses based on the GDP growth, because Singapore can calculate exactly what is the contribution of the civil service to the GDP growth.
Okay,
because of that murkiness and lack of clarity, we have had a perception that the public service is not performing, and therefore in fiscal sustainability, it is a bad investment.
All right. So let me pick up from where the senator left. Olekina, just give me a few minutes. I'll engage you in this conversation. But Daktari, the senator asked a very important question. This decision is going to affect the lives of thousands of Kenyans out there. Was there any public participation? Did you seek the minds of Kenyans out there? This is what we are trying to do. What do you guys think about this? Are there unintended consequences? How will this change how the public service is viewed?
In my view, the announcement was just the beginning of the engagement of the framework. The law says the public service shall put in place a framework. That announcement is the beginning of that engagement. But at technical level, there has been evaluations that has been done. We are dealing with two critical issues. The issue of the millennial who is looking for flexible working environment, and the issue of attracting and retaining suitable employment. From the initial data, it shows really that the public service must prepare for these changes. If you look at data, it says that the public sector has got only an engagement rate of about 29%, as opposed to about 45% in the private sector. How do you therefore change these dynamics to ensure that you get the very best out of who you have? Among the raft of proposals, one is to ensure that the public servant does not grow complacent. Two, I want to also mention that the biggest challenge we had with the permanent and pensionable terms is that you find a lot of public servants who have done 10 years or 5 years pensionable service. They want to leave, but they can't leave because they will lose their pension. So those are the things we are talking about. It is like giving a ventilation to a one monodirectional system. I was reading in the newspapers, I think today, where a journalist from Nation has been appointed to a senior position in the Standard. So I think that is what we call career development. It is not that it is monodirectional, that if I start as a clerk in the civil service, so I will go to the PS.
Daktari,
yes.
For the sake of Kenyans watching out there,
yes,
and in probably 30 seconds, because I need to take a fast break, this, from where we stand right now, this is just a proposal, right?
Yes, a proposal.
Great.
Yes.
All right, so that is where I take my fast break. Thank you for staying with me. Dr. Sylvester Obongo, Director of Performance, Public Service Commission. Olekina Jerry, Deputy Secretary General, Kenya Union of Civil Servants. Olekina, stay with me. I'll just get your feedback immediately after this short break. We are taking that break now.